Hi everyone and welcome to Sober Bliss with me, Gail. And today I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend Lisa de Jong. Hi Lisa,
Hi, Gail.
how are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so excited to talk to you today because you are a very special lady. So can you just tell everybody a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am what's called a menstruality coach. Um,
Mhm.
Simple English, that means like period coach, as in I support women through their menstrual cycle journey. Um, and I do that from a self-care point of view. So for women who are suffering with physical issues like painful periods or a condition linked to their fertility, or I help women connect with their menstrual cycle for emotional well-being as well. So there's kind of,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's exciting. And how do you help women and why should we kind of keep track of our cycle?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Gail. So I teach women about the science of the cycle, so about the endocrine system, which means all the hormones that are going on in our bodies,
Hmm.
and the nervous system, which is also really important. And so we learn about the science, and then we learn about self-care and what kind of foods can help us. And then we learn about the cyclical nature of the menstrual cycle. So we learn about the different energies at the different phases in the cycle and
Hmm.
how we can look after ourselves as women, because we're different to men in that we have that cyclical nature on a very body focused level.
Yeah.
And that has implications in our daily lives, in our workplace, in our relationships, in recovery, in our mental health even. So I help women explore their own bodies and help them to understand what they need for themselves.
Hmm.
And it's so in reality, what that looks like is I do one-to-one coaching, I do workshops, I have a lot of content, I'm always on Instagram.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm mostly teaching and then holding space for women to explore their bodies and their emotions through their what I call the psychosomatic experience of the female body.
Wow. It's so interesting and so deep and just really loving and, as you say, kind of self-care focused.
Yeah.
And I recently downloaded your guide, as you know, and to be honest, I had no idea. All I used to do was write the day on my calendar, and that was about it.
Mm.
And before that, that's all I did, and I just thought that was what everybody did. So why should we try and kind of keep track of where we are exactly in our cycles?
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, I'd like to say that I think that is quite good that you did that. I don't
Oh,
think many women
really?
do that. I certainly didn't do that before I came to this work. My period was always a surprise to me, do you know,
Yeah.
like after years, like so. So yeah, I think even tracking when you're due your period is really
Mm,
helpful, especially if a woman is suffers with her menstrual cycle in some way and has pain, because what that allows is then we can. For me, for example, I my journey is the reason I came to this work was because I had a lot of pain. I was fainting with pain, and then I eventually got diagnosed with a condition called endometriosis, which is very painful, very common condition.
mm,
And so now I've learned to manage, manage my life around that. And so I know when my vulnerable time is in the cycle. So when
yeah,
it comes to period, I plan my meals in advance and I make sure I have lots of healthy fruit and veg and food in the fridge. And I kind of batch cook things and I put them in the freezer. And then I have a few days where I don't really need to cook. It's really nice. And I have
yeah.
nice, healthy, even just for a few days, that can make a huge difference. But going back to your question, it's very important I think it's very important for women to track their menstrual cycle or even have some idea of where they're at, like even on a weekly level,
Mm,
because we understand then where our vulnerable times are in our body and where our stronger times are in our bodies. And then we can relate to other people and to our life and our work or our recovery or our self-care from that understanding of what's happening on the physical level. And that brings a huge amount of self-compassion, and also clarity, because the world of self-care can be a bit overwhelming and confusing, and there's so much information and advice out there. There's so much, which is great. It's really good for having these conversations. But when it comes to what I call this, the practice is called menstrual cycle awareness. It's like a mindfulness practice. And it helps me understand, oh, today, for example, today I'm on day 14. I don't necessarily need to do gentle yoga. Actually, what's better for me today is more vigorous exercise, because my estrogen is high today. And it's really important for me to connect with people and to not isolate today, because my body needs that on a very physical level, to connect with people and to use that energy that I have, the estrogen levels that I have. Because otherwise what can happen is, if I isolate today, then my inner critic can become quite strong.
Yeah.
Whereas at the opposite side of the cycle, so in menstruation, that I wouldn't describe being alone time as isolating. That's actually solitude and restful and caring, because it could be overwhelming to spend a lot of time with people when we're feeling on a physical level very vulnerable. So that's kind of, does that explain, the what I mean, in terms of tracking, being aware? Yeah. So that's,
yes, it does. And like we talked about earlier, it makes perfect sense, because before, when I hadn't had your lovely guide, there would be times when I would feel like really energized, or I would feel like I wanted to do something, but I wasn't sure why or what I was supposed to do. And other times when you kind of don't feel like doing anything, but you've got things planned and you just try and push on, and not really understanding why you're feeling that way. So definitely clarity, like you said before, and self-awareness, it's just so important and helpful to know why you're feeling that way, not just random, oh, I don't feel very good today, or you know what I mean. It's so helpful.
Yeah, there's a reason, there's a physical, scientific, hormonal reason behind it, and it's not like, for so long women have been kind of fobbed off for being emotional or hormonal, but now we're starting to have these conversations, and it's actually, there's meaning to be gained here, and there's understanding, and for me at least, it makes my self-care a lot easier. So
yeah, because when you can do certain things, and understand when you should maybe take a step back, or when you can put your energy to good use, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it.
What I like about your guide and the work that you do as well is that you kind of compare our cycle as to going through different seasons. Can you explain the different seasons that our bodies go through?
Yes, I can. So the menstrual cycle is a cycle. So I like to think as there's kind of 4 sections to it, in the way that there's 4 seasons in the year, and we kind of return to the year.
Yeah.
So when we are on our period or menstruation, the archetype, or the season to compare that to, is the winter. And the reason for that is because that's when our hormones are at their lowest.
Okay.
And from a kind of energetic point of view, that's when we feel the desire to kind of hibernate and withdraw from the world. And that doesn't mean do less, stuff, or, stay in bed all day long and not go to work. It can even just mean withdraw, like, emotionally from things. So we can still be in a situation, but like on the inside, really tending to ourselves, and even just small things like having a nice herbal tea if we're in a meeting, or wearing more comfortable clothes that day, or preparing our meals, small things like that. And that's the inner winter. It's a very inner focused time psychosomatically. Estrogen is at its lowest, and it's a very vulnerable time physically. And well, some women can experience quite a lot of relief here after the pre-menstruation, but generally speaking, it is a vulnerable time. And a lot of women really suffer here with pain. So if you do suffer with physical pain here, cramping and the likes, I do recommend as much rest as they can during their period. It makes sense to rest during this time. So similar to the animals and to nature, it's the time of death. Like I describe the womb as a place of life and death because it is.
Yeah.
So like every month we have an opportunity to conceive, and when we don't conceive, then that, you know, that's the shedding the lining of the womb, and the egg dies. So there's kind of a little death that happens in our bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's winter.
Okay.
And then so it's important to kind of, you know, slow down and rest in order to nourish ourselves and be prepared for the coming days. So then as we emerge from what I call the period cave.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
Period cave. We come into springtime, which is pre-ovulation.
Okay.
And on a physical level, what happens here is our estrogen is increasing a little bit, our hormones start to pick up a bit. Our follicles start to mature, so that's kind of what's happening scientifically, and we begin to feel that little bit more energetic. And it's the time in between menstruation and ovulation, so it's that transition season. It's the spring. And if we think about the spring I'm here in Ireland, and you know, you're in Spain, and I know you're from the UK, so we have those seasonal climates.
Yeah.
Spring is very it's kind of a joyful time. It's innocent. We've got the spring lambs. We have quite delicate flowers coming up during that time. And so actually it's really important to emerge gently from the period cave, because if we race out into the world from an energetic place, we can burn out quite easily. So we have to be careful energetically to really just be really kind to ourselves during this time, because it's quite, for me actually, even though I suffered with pain for a long time, after years of tracking my cycle, I learned that my inner spring was quite a vulnerable time, because my inner critic could come in here and be like, why aren't you doing everything and achieving, you know? So
right, yeah. So not kind of rush out and start doing things or feel guilty because you didn't do anything, and try and make up for it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like we can still do, like, and I understand that there's lots of people out there women who have, you know, families and, you know, jobs, and, you know, we have a lot of stuff to do. So it's not necessarily about not doing things. As I said before, it's just the approach, or asking for help, or like you said, be careful of the inner critic. That's a really important time to not be hard on ourselves during that time. So just watching the way we speak to ourselves. So then we come to the summer, which is ovulation. And another archetype here is the mother. So that person who can be all things, to, you know, caring for people. And this is where our estrogen is at its highest. We also have a little bit of testosterone that kicks in here. And this is like the super woman time. Like,
wow.
This is some powerful time, right? It's really, you know, it can be quite intense for some women. It can also be a time of burnout if we don't rest during menstruation. So, you know, this is all very archetypal, and this is why tracking is important, because this is not the same for everyone. Every woman's experience is different.
Yeah.
And, you know, an ideal, but it's not. This is just kind of an example. But so the inner summer is the time where we can conceive. That's when we're fertile. And we just have lots of energy. So this is a really good time to be social, to, you know, go out and enjoy life and get the projects, you know, get your work done and compensate for the time that you rested during menstruation. You know, this is a good time. The only thing I'll say for the inner summer is be careful that your inner summer goddess doesn't take over your diary.
Yes.
She thinks she rules the show. This is the problem with the inner summer, is like she thinks there's this thing called, like, I like to describe, called cycle amnesia, where we forget that we're cyclical, you know, and when we're in this day of heightened energy, we can forget that, you know, this too shall pass, and it's not always the way. So just be careful not to schedule in loads of social events for the coming 2 weeks. You'll regret that in a couple of days' time. That's the summer. And then after the summer is the autumn. So that's the premenstrual time.
Hmm.
On a scientific level, that's when progesterone starts to kick in with the menstrual cycle. And it at the start of the inner autumn, this is kind of soothing, grounded time. So that heightened energy kind of starts to come down a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is still a very active, energetic time. But what can happen here is, of course, the dreaded premenstrual syndromes can kick in here. And this is a time that can be difficult for women because we can start to experience irritability and, like emotions can get quite charged during this time.
Yeah.
So this is actually a really important time to just be really mindful of what's going on in our lives and in our bodies. But what I will say is if women do experience a lot of heightened emotions during this time, it's not because she's crazy or a hysterical woman. It's because there could be an underlying hormonal imbalance going on, or in her life, there could be something that she needs to address. And there's truth underneath the feelings and the emotions, and there could be relationship problems, So I won't say too much about the inner autumn because it's a big area to explore, but it is a time to start slowing down. And women might have a day where they suddenly feel this urge to clean the house or, do the laundry or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the psychosomatic experience of knowing in our bodies that we're preparing for the winter and menstruation again, and that we want to, down tools in a few days' time. That's kind of it in a nutshell, the seasons.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So would you recommend maybe just keeping track of what's going on? So maybe write down the days that you are. So if keep a track of what days you are in your cycle and how you're feeling and your moods, and just kind of notice it, just be aware of it, and maybe not try to change anything at first, but just become aware. Is that a good way to start?
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion, Gail. Yeah, because it's a mindfulness practice, and mindfulness is all about non-judgmental awareness, right? So so that's a really good place to start, is because it can be very overwhelming when you start this work and you were never told this before, and it's a lot of emotion and confusion, so definitely just very gently start to track the cycle, and just the word I like to use is curiosity. Bring that curiosity to your body and to your emotions and your mental state in relation to your hormones. Absolutely. And then over time, you can start to put in very small changes. And because this work is not something that you can do overnight, it is really changes. Similar to as well. It's, you can't do it. It's a one day at a time approach, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's ongoing, isn't it? It's a process. Yeah. So that kind of leads on really nicely to my next question, which is in terms of sobriety. So how can being aware of our cycle, our seasons, how can that help us when we are first, when we first quit drinking, or we're in the early stages of sobriety and we're kind of all over the place and we don't know what's going on, we don't know what we want or what we need?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So cycle awareness in terms of sobriety and on that first kind of, I get that. It's a very turbulent time, isn't it?
It is.
And the reason for that, at least my understanding, is because when we enter into sobriety, we put down the thing that was giving us soothing, for emotional reasons. It's a very emotional experience. So now we're kind of faced with these raw and very charged emotions that we were dealing with in other ways. So now we need to look at new ways to look after ourselves emotionally and physically. So menstrual cycle awareness, I like to describe it as providing kind of a container in which to hold ourselves and a reference point for our bodies and our hormones. And because the menstrual cycle is very connected to our diet, our endocrine system, so our hormones, and also our nervous system. That's all very much emotional, and our gut, it's all very interconnected. it helps us, give us understanding, but also trust in our bodies, that, it's not going to be, if we are having a day where we're feeling very emotional or mood swings or whatever, we know that this too shall pass, and it's not going to be that way the whole time.
So can I just quickly say that that's a really good point that you've made there, because often when I talk to people who are maybe in the early stages of recovery and they're having a really bad day, and somebody likened it the other day to having a tantrum. She didn't know what was going on, and she was having a mini tantrum because she was saying, I'm an adult, I should be allowed to have a drink, why can't I have a drink? But really something else is going on inside. So it's not necessarily about the fact that you're not drinking alcohol. It's not the fact that that's been removed. It's what else is going on inside your body that might be making you feel that way.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also completely normal for that woman that you gave the example of to feel like that, and it's actually probably a good thing.
Yes.
I know it's hard, like when you're in it, and I can totally relate to that. And it's very difficult to contain the emotions in our bodies. But it is a sign that you're healing. Like, even if, for me, something that's always a good sign for me is when I feel emotional and I allow my tears to come. It's very, it's like it's kind of like my body is a portal for processing emotions. Whether it's or grief or something, those emotions can be very difficult, and we're not taught how to work with them. No, yeah. So for women who do experience that, like, it's completely normal, and in fact, it's a good thing, but they just need that little bit more support, whether it's through a program or menstrual cycle awareness or whatever it is. Like, it's not something that you can do by yourself, I don't think.
I agree, that's so helpful. Okay. So what can we do then if we find ourselves in a similar situation to that lady I told you about? Or if we find ourselves, we've suddenly got all of this energy and we perhaps don't know why, or we're having a bad day, or we're feeling down. How can our being aware of our menstrual cycle help us through those particular moments?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll give some personal examples, actually. It might be helpful.
Thank you.
Even though I teach the stuff, it's like, every day is a new day for me. So like last week I was in my inner spring. So it was a few days after I had my period, and I'd rested quite a lot during my period. But because I'd had quite an intense summer, and I just moved house, and I just a lot going on in my life, I found myself feeling very emotionally flat and lonely after my period. And my codependency, that kind of codependent feeling was starting to come up in me, and wanting to reach out to people, when they were busy, and just for my own sake. And so when I was in it, it's a very difficult emotion to sit with, but because I knew that I was in my inner spring, I knew, okay, I don't have estrogen really on my side here. I don't really have it on my side here. So the lesson I have tasks for different seasons. So the task for the springtime, for the inner spring after menstruation, is to cherish yourself. So even though it's hard, like I went out to the park, and I made sure I got out to nature, because that's really good for the nervous system. I did my best to cook nourishing meals. And I spoke to people I trust as well about my feelings. It's very important in my own practice to talk out my emotions with them in a kind of a safe environment. So things like that. And because I knew I was in the inner spring, I just knew I needed extra self-care during that time, and to not be hard on myself. But every time I come around my cycle, it's like that's always for me a tricky point, that time after menstruation. So I have to be careful there. So that's kind of one example. And then the opposite, you can have the opposite as well, where you could be in your ovulation, which is the other side of menstruation. So around day 14, it depends on the woman. And she could be experiencing burnout, or her inner critic could be coming in quite strong. And hormones are on our side there. So we do have estrogen quite strong there. So that could be a really good time to, you know, do a really intense workout in the gym. Lift weights is a good thing to do there. Lifts the endorphins. Yeah, it's good because we have testosterone on our side. Yeah, so lifting weights, going to, you know, nice, not a gentle yoga practice, but like a nice strong, you know, exercise. Can be really helpful to, you know, for emotions and for our body. So yeah, we're kind of matching our self-care from an emotional side to our physical side when it comes to the cycle awareness, and it brings in a lot of compassion to ourselves. So for me, if I do experience my inner critic, or you know, I don't feel good in my inner summer, it's usually because I'm not using my energy physically.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And my energy starts to turn inwards in the form of a critic, and I start to do hard stuff. So even putting your energy into creative projects or into your family or friends, like it needs to go outward.
Yes, so, like finding that release, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
The need to get things out, but the need needs to be done addressed in a healthy way, not in, okay, I'm feeling like I need a party, I'm going to go out and get drunk, basically.
No, like do do some creativity, go do some exercise, go somewhere new, like, because I struggle with going to new places. I get a little nervous with going to places I've never been before.
Me too.
Like going to a new museum or a new park or somewhere new is a good thing to do in the inner summer, because we have our hormones to support us. We have more emotional resilience during that time.
Yeah, we feel stronger, don't we?
Yeah.
So this is kind of a really good toolkit to have. You've probably heard of sober toolkits and all the tools that we need to help us through. And this cycle awareness, I feel, is a really beneficial, a really strong extra toolkit that we can benefit from in sobriety.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely in sobriety, because it is very much an emotional journey, you know. So this brings it back to the body and understanding our emotions on a very physical level.
Yeah. I like what you say that about bringing everything to a physical level. And I know that you've done a lot of kind of work with yoga and things. So do you have a yoga pose or position or a technique that you could share with us that might be particularly useful in maybe one of our seasons?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I might send you a picture afterwards or something. You can
that would be great.
Yeah, so one of the very important things to have a healthy menstrual cycle is to take care of our nervous system. And what that means is like our stress levels. So there's a few poses that you can do to help bring the nervous system down.
Okay.
And one is called constructive rest position. So I can name, there's a woman in the US, her name is Liz Cook, and she specializes in a very restorative yoga practice around one muscle in the body.
Wow.
And the muscle is called the psoas muscle, so PSOAS.
Okay.
I'll send you all this after, Gail. So she's done a lot of research on this muscle, and the muscle is one of our core muscles in our tummy, really, in our core. And you know, we're so used to living in a world where when we go to the gym, it's all about toning our core and strengthening our core, and this really, like, you know, tightening our core. But she does the opposite. She teaches core release. So this muscle is very much linked to the nervous system, and it's linked to our emotions. And she describes it as a muscle of the soul, which I love. So this muscle kind of holds a lot of stress, and if we continue to hold stress in our life from past experience, that then triggers our present, right? So there's this particular position, constructive rest position. It's really easy. It's just lying down on a nice yoga mat or on a blanket with your legs in a 90-degree angle with your feet flat on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And your arms can be out like this so that your shoulder blades are open, or else they can sit over your chest like this to give a bit of weight down.
Okay.
And you can lie there for hours, but I like to lie there for maybe 10 minutes. And the reason we lie there for more than 2 minutes is because we allow gravity to kind of bring down the muscle and release the muscle. So it's a lovely thing to do, and you can listen to a mindfulness meditation, or you can read a book, or you can listen to a podcast or something. It's a really nice thing to do.
Yeah.
What I will say is, when you start to practice this kind of really restorative practice and this particular position, the body can go into a bit of a tremor. Our legs can start to shake a little bit, and that's completely normal.
Okay.
The reason that is because it's releasing trauma from the past that's held in the body.
Right. So not to panic if that happens, and just kind of let it happen.
Yeah, let it happen. And if it's too much, you can ease out of it, or you can put a soft cushion underneath your lower back to support your lower back.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can bring your legs into like an open V position as well, and put a bolster underneath your knees.
Okay.
So poses like that, like if your audience type into Google restorative yoga, it's very.
Put it at the bottom. You should be able to see it now.
You can Google search that, and there's so many yoga teachers on YouTube and online who show you, and essentially what they are they're not movements. It's still poses where you sit in your position and you have lots of cushions and support. And the idea is that it allows your body to release, because we do so much holding, don't we, in our lives, especially as so it's like a release. Very important to breathe, because doing that physical work is so good for our emotions, sobriety, the whole journey that your audience are on, and just feeling good in our bodies. Feeling like rest is actually a safe place to go, because for a lot of us, we've been on overdrive for so long, and if we just suddenly stop, our nervous system isn't used to that. So it can actually bring tension into the body. So it's important to actually just do this really gently. Just, try one or two poses for a few minutes, see if you like them, and then, try something different.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds lovely. Just listening to you talk about it, I'm beginning to feel better already. So this is just kind of part of the work that you do, because you do a lot, don't you? So how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about your work, and if they want to work with you?
Yeah, thank you, Gail. So I'm online. My website is yourcyclematters.com, yourcyclematters.com. And I'm on Instagram. I can't remember my handle on Instagram. It's like _ Lisa de Jong or something. But if you go on my website, if you scroll to the bottom of the homepage, you'll find my Instagram feed, and you can connect with me there on Instagram. And I have a Facebook page, Your Cycle Matters. And I also have a private Facebook group for anyone who wants to practice menstrual cycle awareness and then share their experience, and then I will give a little bit of guidance and feedback in terms of what can help those women. And I do one-to-one coaching. At the moment I'm doing workshops in Dublin, so if anyone wants to come to Dublin, they can come here. But I also I'm kind of still on my journey of exploring how this work looks, so I'm thinking of doing an online program next year. And then on my website I have as you mentioned already, like a resource guide that people can download, and I have a newsletter there, so they can see that on my homepage as well, on my website. So it's all on my website, really.
It's everything's on the website. Well, we put everything here in the video, and we're going to leave it here for now. So thank you so much for talking to me, Lisa. But I'm really excited because you join us over in the program as well, don't you?
Bye.
Bye for now. Thank you.